Days since the ban was imposed, the Iraqi parliament, outraged and insulted, has passed a reciprocal ban. It's my understanding that a 4-star general who has been visiting the United States for 10 years and who has been fighting terrorism on the front lines is barred by the president's executive order from coming to the United States, which he's been doing for the last 10 years to coordinate activities with our own military. How absurd. Instead of making us safer, this ban will aid ISIS both materially and as a potent recruitment tool. For those non-immigrants or non-refugees teetering on the edge of radicalization, both here in America or in Europe, this ban could very well be the tipping point. What a bad strategy. It is, in my view, unconstitutional. It is both bad in terms of the law, and it's bad in terms of policy. It's no wonder that less than a third of Americans feel that the ban makes them safer, according to a new Reuters Ipsos poll. We're going to hear shortly from an Iraqi interpreter who served alongside U.S. forces, now under threat of not being allowed into the country if they travel abroad. Earlier this week, U.S. combat veterans shared their stories. Those who fought overseas at the point of the spear on behalf of keeping America safe. They're protesting this ban, and one of them, former Marine Sergeant Andrew Biggio, said, and I quote, "We owe them. You want to talk about saving American lives from terrorists? These interpreters did that. They saved a lot of our lives." A 5-year-old young girl came back to Dulles Airport. She was not with her mother or father. She was with other family. And she was kept for 4 hours, 5-year-old little girl, 4 hours from seeing her mother at the airport because of this ban. President Trump, end this ban. Not only because it's wrong, but because it puts Americans and our allies in danger. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and for convening this hearing. And I
Thank you
yield back.
very much. Thank you to our distinguished whip, Mr. Hoyer. We've been joined by the ranking member, former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, with us today, as well as Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, a leader on the Judiciary Immigration Subcommittee. I want to join all of them in welcoming our very distinguished panel here today. They will be introduced by our committee leadership. I also want to thank Congresswoman Lois Frankel, Carol Shea Porter, Nydia Velasquez, Donald Payne, Val Demings, Dwight Evans, right here, and then our distinguished chair of the House Democratic Caucus, Joe Crowley, our ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, Eliot Engel. Members will be coming in. I know we all would associate ourselves with Mr. Hoyer's remarks that covered so much territory, but I just want to say this. We take an oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and implicit in that is to protect the American people. In both cases, the Trump administration has violated that oath of office. What they are doing is not only unconstitutional, but it makes the American people less safe. That's why over 900 national security leaders and diplomats have said this makes us less safe. At the same time, they're taking actions like putting a white supremacist on the National Security Council and saying to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the director of National Intelligence, "We'll call you if and when we need you, but you're no longer a permanent member." How does that make America more safe? National security by white supremacists. So it is, we have our legislation, the Statue of Liberty Values Act that Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren has taken the lead on. 3 times the Republicans have blocked our ability to bring that bill up to the floor, onto the floor to enable us to honor the oath of office that we all take. I want you to know that you being here, you're knowing your power Imagine the women empowered America to turn out for our values, our harmony, and our good spirit. That encouraged people to show up at the airports over the weekend in large numbers because they realized the impact they could have. And then many people on the steps of the Capitol, of the Supreme Court. When we went there, we just said we're having a press conference. We didn't organize anything. None of this organized. All of it spontaneous, organic, because people know what they believe about what our country stands for. All of you are very special guests for us today. You will be introduced by the leadership of the committee. As I mentioned, Mr. Khan, I want to thank you for your courage and your leadership, as well as our other dignitaries who are here to testify. This is a very important hearing. This is not a meeting. This is a continuation of actions that must be taken to honor our oath of office, to protect and defend the Constitution and the American people. And with that, I yield to a champion for all of that, our distinguished ranking member on the Judiciary Committee, a person who has in his entire career in the Congress dedicated to honoring that oath of office and broadening freedoms for many people in our country, actually the Dean of the House of Representatives, Congressman Ranking Member John Conyers.
Thank you very much, Leader Pelosi, for that introduction. And what a morning this is to have all of our distinguished witnesses, 7 people here. And I would like you to know that it was through my relationship with the late Dr. Martin Luther King and my going south as an attorney that I also met Rosa Parks, who then, after my election, worked in my office until she retired. I am grateful to my distinguished panel here with me. Ms. Lofgren, would you like to go?
Mr. Crowley wants to say something. And then
Okay. Chairman Joe Crowley is here, and we would yield to him at this point.
Thank you, John. I'll be very brief. It's very sad we're here today. And I would just say that I'm incredibly concerned about the direction of our country. I never thought I would feel this way right now. But so pleased to have this room filled as it is today and to hear from our guests. And that's what I want to hear from. Particularly, I want to say to Mr. Khan again, I've had the opportunity for the 3rd time in this week to see you again. And I consider you a friend, a great champion, and a great American. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for all of you being here today. Our country is in grave danger, and it needs to see leadership on both the Democrat and the Republican side standing up for what is right, for what has made America great. What has made America great is our freedoms, and they're in danger. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you, John.
You're more than welcome.
Mr. Chairman, we've been joined by Congresswoman Nanette Barragan of California, Suzanne Bonamici of Oregon, Lucille Roybal-Allard of California. She's coming around. But members will continue to join us. I yield to you again, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you so much. I would like to find out if Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren of Judiciary Committee would like to make some welcome remarks.
I'll be very brief because I want to hear from these witnesses, but I concur in the comments made so far. You know, part of being free is adhering to the rule of law. And I know that in addition to being a Gold Star parent, Mr. Khan is also an immigration lawyer, and so he knows that the executive order issued by President Trump violates the Immigration and Nationality Act. It does also run afoul of the Equal Protection Clause and the Due Process Clauses of the Constitution. And so the hardship that's been visited on people, the damage done to our reputation is immense, but the damage to the rule of law is also immense. And if we're going to get through this challenging time as a free country, adherence to the rule of law must be our guide. I'll just say one final thing. We all want to be kept safe. This order makes us less safe. It has led to ridiculous results. And I just want to mention one in the hopes that something may be done. We all remember the story of the Yazidis who were isolated on the top of a mountain. They were going to be exterminated by ISIS. President Obama took action to save them. And a very valiant woman, the only Yazidi woman in the Iraqi parliament, is set to be honored by the Tom Lantos Commission here in the Capitol next week, except that she can't come to accept this honor for Congress. So I hope that we will repeal this order, take up my bill, if that is the best way to do it, or plead with the president to reverse his stand and go back to the rule of law. So thank you, Mr. Conyers.
Thank you very much. We've been joined by Jerry Nadler of New York, distinguished member of Pakistani American, spoken about their love for the United States, who has joined us.
Jerry Nadler.
Oh, and Judge is with a sense of brevity.
Virginian. I come from Charlottesville Patriots. Leaders and the leaders sitting inflicted on my country and on my nation want to on
board a religious test for refugees. We believe our national goal should continue to be to resettle the world's most vulnerable refugees. In any case, a total moratorium on refugees strands Christians, Muslims, and others alike. So we urge President Trump, with the full support of the United States Congress, to immediately reinstate our nation's refugee resettlement program, which is desperately needed for such a time as this. Our system is complex, and abruptly stopping and restarting operations is expensive, disruptive, and unnecessary. So we welcome a further review of security and vetting systems, but this should take place concurrently with ongoing resettlement. The U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program is the crown jewel of American humanitarianism. Since 1980, a unique public-private partnership has saved the lives of the most vulnerable people in the world. As a nation, we've been repaid for our compassion and generosity with the hard work, dedication, loyalty, and patriotism of some 3 million new Americans and their children and grandchildren. Millions of Americans have been inspired by their examples of faith and their stories of courage. And billions more around the world hold the United States in higher esteem because of our noble humanitarian work. It's a win-win for us, for refugees, and for the world. And we pray that God will guide each of you and all our leaders as you serve our nation at this critical time.
Thank you, sir. We're limited, unfortunately, to 3 minutes each, even the members of Congress, and particularly the members of Congress. But our next presenter is Senior Staff Attorney Andre Segura at the Immigrants' Rights Project of the American Civil Liberties Union, which works with us in many ways. He, Mr. Segura, is currently challenging President Trump's executive order as well as anti-immigrant laws in various states. Welcome to this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and distinguished reps. And thank you for inviting the ACLU at this important time. I want us to all be clear. President Trump's executive order of last Friday is unconstitutional. We should not waver on that. We are clear. It is unconstitutional and should be, and the president should withdraw that order. It is an affront to our founding principles and the values that we all hold dear as Americans. As you will hear and you've heard in the news, it has turned lives upside down. The ACLU on Saturday morning, after hearing reports of 2 Iraqi nationals who were detained at JFK Airport, filed a lawsuit in the early hours to seek their release and the release of other individuals like them who were being held. We later filed an emergency stay motion to prevent the removal of individuals who were held at JFK Airport in Brooklyn and across the country on a national basis. Since then, and that order was granted shortly after 8 p.m. on Saturday night. Since our challenge, which continues, there have been dozens of challenges across the country on behalf of individuals who have been detained or who may be affected by the executive order. All courts who have ruled thus far on these issues have sided against the president and his administration. They have issued stays of the order across the country. They have demanded the return of individuals who were unlawfully returned to their country of origin, in many cases, with fear of persecution and a danger to their lives. That is incredibly important for us to remember. It is rare for this to happen, where courts across the country are unequivocally ruling against this Muslim ban. President Trump's words were clear when he started his campaign. He called for a complete and total shutdown of Muslim immigration into this country. Words matter. The president's words matter, and we will hold him to account for those words, and we will challenge him until the executive order is overturned. On Saturday, I spent the day at JFK Airport with Representative Nadler and Representative Velasquez, who were also there attempting to get our clients and many others out of detention. And what I saw there was nothing short of incredible. Hundreds of attorneys came in from all over, from all different types of of law firms and nonprofits around the city, not just in New York, where I was, but across the country, including here at Dulles Airport, in San Francisco, in LA, in Washington, in Massachusetts, throughout. There was an outpouring of support to file legal challenges on behalf of individuals who've been detained. But more importantly, we saw an outpouring of support from the American people who showed up to the airports to protest outside. To see a sea of protesters outside at the same time that we were filing petitions was nothing short of incredible. With that, I will conclude. I'm happy to answer questions about any of the pending cases, of which there are now many, and they are changing rapidly. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segura. I'm pleased now to introduce Faraha Khalifi, who came to the United States on a special immigrant visa after facing extreme violence in response to her engineering and translating work with the United States military forces in Iraq. She is currently scheduled to take her United States citizenship test next week. A special welcome to our discussion today.
For your time, Madam Leader Pelosi and all the representatives here who attend with us and to support us. I appreciate it. At this time, I would like to personally thank each and every one of these distinguished members here today for his and her time, patient and heartfelt understanding regarding this topic. My name is Farah Amir Kamal, and I was born and raised in Babylon, Iraq, and I began supporting the U.S. military and American forces in 2003 by establishing an engineering firm with my father. My company constructed military pads, security barriers, roads, and additionally supplied security equipment for base security throughout the country. Among other high-level contribution, I provided security equipment across Iraq, support the first prime minister election post-Saddam Hussein era, which reached zero casualties, result in zero casualties. As a result of my unwavering support to the U.S. mission and the freedom of Iraq, on Christmas Eve of 2006, I was assaulted, my father was kidnapped, and my husband was murdered. I additionally served as a linguist and senior member for the Iraqi government and U.S. military, and also with overwhelming support from IRAB in 2012. My children and I were awarded sanctuary in America, and we were so we could begin our new life in peace. First of all, I wish to express my deepest respect to the President Trump, and I believe that our nation's security first and national security come first. I'm here today also to express my fear and how the executive order might affect my status and my life. I'm scheduled to have my citizenship exam next week, and I have fears that my citizenship will be placed on hold and maybe will never be approved. I have fears that I will not be able to see my family in Iraq or Amman. My family has applied for their SIV program in 2008. My father and mother and my 2 sisters still in Iraq, and my brother Ali still in Amman with his family waiting for their visa and then to be approved. My father was approved twice, but he couldn't leave my special needs sister in Iraq. The embassy has told us that their visa in their final stages for approval, but they are stuck. My father was one of the first engineers that worked with the U.S. military since 2003. My father believes in the United States and what this great nation stands for. The day that I traveled to America, my father was happy for me, and he told me that I will be in good hands with the American people. My father has been kidnapped, assaulted, and when we paid the ransom, my father returned home, but he wasn't himself. He's still loving and kind and a great person, but he getting so old, and he's tried to protect his family, and he couldn't do that because his health is getting bad each and every day. My sisters have been working with the Americans since 2009, and their husbands divorced them because their husband told them this family is targeted, and we will not want to be affiliated with you, and we don't want to bring dangers to ourselves as well. So they left them with their children. My sister Zina and her interview last month, and she mailed her passport to the U.S. Embassy to have her visa printed and finalized. Now everything is on hold, and she is began to be targeted by the terrorists again each and every day. My brother lives in Amman, and the U.S. Embassy in Amman mentioned that his visa will be ready by February 8th. He was all happy and excited. He sold his apartment in Amman, the small one, and he gave his 2 weeks notice to his work, and he's waiting for visa, and now nothing. Nobody hear anything. I recently contacted Representative Barbara Comstock office and had inquiry on behalf of my father to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, and the response was there was not such a name and there was not such a case number for Mr. Kamal. In closing, I'm looking to the people in this room and this great people. I am looking for assistance and I'm looking for answers. I feel like terrorists created the refugees. I would like to tell Mr. President that my family will never be a security threat or pose any threat to the national security. We protected the soldiers in Iraq, and we love the United States of America. We have spilled blood for the country, and we have shed tears as dead soldiers were carried away in the American flags. And I remember Lieutenant Commander Bob Zangas in Hilla in my town, 2004. Everyone know him and what he's going through. My entire family has worked with them with all military ranks, including 4-star generals. They always remembered my father as the good man and as the close friend to the United States of America. Becoming an American, it's not a right, it's a privilege. And I pray the day will come that I will pick my family from the airport and show them around this amazing country that I call my home, United States of America. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you so very much. Our final panelist is Mr. Omar Al-Muqdad, a Syrian journalist and documentary filmmaker who studied political science and international relations at the University of Damascus. He was imprisoned for 2 years for speaking out critically against the Syrian Assad regime. Welcome, sir, to this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for all our distinguished representatives. Thank you all. My name is Omar Al-Muqdad. I'm a Syrian journalist and filmmaker. I came to the United States in 2012 as a refugee from Syria. I was imprisoned by Syrian regime security forces a few times. The longest time was 3 years for practicing my journalism, for speaking the truth against the authority. Then I ended up in 2011 in Turkey came there as a refugee from Syria, and I have to apply in UNHCR. I went through a tough vetting process. It lasted for almost 1 year, until finally I got approved to come to the United States. First, I was resettled in northwest Arkansas, in a small town called Fayetteville. I was really back then touched and by the friendly atmosphere and by the welcoming and the warmth that I saw from the people firsthand. Unfortunately, refugees today, they've been the one who are sinned against rather than the sinners. They are the one who are getting the blame instead of blaming who make them refugees, which is the Syrian security forces and the Assad regime with his allies and the terrorists. Syrian refugees are not our enemy, and they never was. They were actually our natural ally. They are the people who are fleeing terrorism, and they are trying to run to a safe haven, to continue their life as a human being. I came to the United States fleeing persecution and fleeing terrorism. And I was hoping that I'm gonna start my new life here in the United States. Next month, I'm gonna apply for my citizenship. And I hope this decision is not gonna affect my situation. This decision has affected thousands of people. So far, as a journalist, I've been monitoring some of these stories. Most of the stories, parents can't get reunited with their kids. University students can't be back to their universities. Businessmen can't travel to continue their businesses and their work. Thousands of people's lives have been devastated by this ban. And just to conclude, refugees are not our enemy. Our enemy is the one who made them refugees. Thank you very much.
So much. We have been so successful that we have more than 15 members, and we welcome Debbie Dingell of Michigan and Judy Chu of California. Thank you all for being here. We're now going to... Oh, Yvette Clark of New York has just come into the room. Oh, this is a very powerful coming together of a distinguished panel of witnesses and members of Congress on a subject matter that is so current, so important, so we've got to do something about it. And we're going to ask, though, because of the great number of members, that if you can reduce your questions or comments to 2 minutes, we would be deeply grateful to you. And we will start with our colleague from New Jersey, Mr. Payne.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Conyers, and to Leader Pelosi and my colleagues. The fabric of this nation is being torn apart right before our eyes. The forefathers of this nation must be rolling over in their graves. The reason this country was constituted, the reason people fled to this new world was because of religious persecution. And now what do we see? Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. Are we supposed to take that off of the Statue of Liberty now? Is this country closed to certain religious groups? And that's just the start. This is the first group. Then who is next? Mr. Conyers, I have more of a statement than the question.
It's perfectly all right.
We need to make sure and ensure that this ban is disbanded, that we open our country back up and live out its creed as a beacon of freedom for people to come, as it was in the past, as it needs to be in the future. And I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Payne. Our next member is Nita Velasquez of New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Leader Pelosi, for holding this important hearing. Mr. Cohn, thank you for being here. You represent the best that America has to offer, and to all of you for giving so great insight into where we found ourselves today. Mr. Segura, last night I held a telephone town hall meeting. Thousands of people were on the phone from New York. And what I was able to sense is how young people are so afraid and so in pain because they feel that our Constitution and our values are being undermined. And they want to know, what can they do? Mr. Cohn, you answered that question also. But in terms of the stay, we know that in many ports and airports, because of the confusion, we all agree that it's unconstitutional, that the rollout was a real disaster. But what can we say? What can we do? What advice and guidance can you give to organizations and grassroots organizers as they rally and formalize strategies going forward?
Thank you. I would say that I would first want to tell them that they should look at the outpouring of support across the country from not only the leaders, many of whom are here, but also the mass public coming out to protest this weekend. In terms of what you can do, get involved. This is the first of many fights, many big fights to come. Get involved locally, push your local leaders and your city council to enact laws and ordinances that are welcoming to immigrants. That is another wave of support that we're seeing across the country, and we need more of that, and you should be pushing your local leaders to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shea Porter of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think members should know it's in order of arrival.
Yes.
I'd like to thank all of you for the message that you brought to Congress and the passion and the love for this country that each one of you showed, and thank you for that. And I hope that the world realizes that we are more than a handful of people. We are, as you see us, standing out there in the streets and writing and calling. That's who we are. We have not lost our way, but we do have an issue that we have to fix because it's not who we are. As you've heard, we are a great country, a country of laws, a country that believes that we are richer when we bring people in. They enrich us with their knowledge and with their enthusiasm, their patriotism. And Mr. Khan, I've had the great privilege of meeting you, and I thank you for spreading the message in such a peaceful, beautiful way. So my question here is to Mr. Breen. Thank you for what you're talking about. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, so I have a special interest in what you were saying, and I would like you to guide us about how damaging is this, or right now are other countries able to recognize that it's not all of us, that they see us out there protesting and they know that Americans are standing up, or are they thinking that maybe the core of America has changed, and what do we need to do to be talking to the heads of other nations to reassure them and their people that we are still wedded to our American values?
Well, thank you for the question, and it's good to see you. As you know, I was born and raised in your district, so it's good to be
Yes.
here. I think in the immediate impact of this, especially in the conflict with the Islamic State, we're already feeling this. General Petraeus said yesterday, I believe, in a different hearing that he mentioned that General al-Kanani, who's the commander of Iraq's counterterrorism forces, is no longer able to travel to the United States to meet with his American counterparts. General al-Kanani's family was relocated to the United States because of terrorist threats against them, so he can't go see his kids now. That is certainly not going to strengthen the alliance, and we're seeing reports of these types of problems across the full range of our military coordination. Iraqi pilots unable to come to Arizona to train, all kinds of issues around that. More broadly, you can't ask your allies on the one hand to put their lives on the line in a fight you're asking them to join, and on the other hand, insult them like this and tell them that they're not welcome in our country because we don't think that they're safe to be here. It's an incoherent strategic approach to the challenge. The larger question, of course, is one I can't answer. I can't tell you what men and women and especially children are waking up around the world and looking at their televisions and seeing this and how their view of America is changing. I have fears about that. We have been something to the world very special for a very long time. When I wore that flag on my shoulder, it was part of my uniform, and it meant something. I hope it continues to mean that. And I think whether it does or not relies in large part on the actions of our government, but it also relies on what you said. I was at Dulles International Airport the same weekend you were at JFK. I saw hundreds of people asked by nobody who just drove there. I met a veteran who drove for 2 hours with his son. Nobody called him, he just showed up. I said, "Why are you here?" He said, "This is not what I fought for." We need more of that.
And I thank you for that. My husband's a veteran. I was a military spouse. I was at that hearing yesterday with General Petraeus, and I hope that everybody's hearing that it actually makes us less secure, not more secure. So thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Eliot Engel of New York.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm the grandson of 4 immigrants who came to this country more than 100 years ago. And I know history, so I remember back in the 1930s when Jewish refugees were escaping from Nazi Germany. The SS St. Louis came to New York and other places in the United States and were turned back, and most of those people were ultimately killed. This is a nation of compassion. It's a nation that has always been the beacon of the world in terms of telling refugees, come. Refugees and immigrants help keep this country on the top of the heap. Because who comes to this country? Not lazy people. Lazy people can stay home. People come to this country because they're industrious people. They want a better life for themselves. And in making a better life for themselves, they make a better life for this country. So I think what's happening now is absolutely outrageous. I wanted to ask Mr. Countryman, as the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I know you for many years. You've had a distinguished career as a diplomat, and you've advanced U.S. interests all over the world. On Tuesday, I and every Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee wrote to the President to remind him of the importance of the dissent channel. This is the way the State Department arrives at good policy. The other day, when news of American diplomats dissenting from the travel ban broke, White House spokesman Sean Spicer said that our diplomats should, and I quote him, "get with the program or they should go," unquote. Now, we all know that the dissent channel is not only a revered institution at the State Department, diplomats are actually given awards for dissenting, but that it's actually protected by law. So I just would like you to comment on that, because what we don't want is we don't want people helping with our foreign policy, afraid to show dissent when they are guaranteed by law to have that channel to dissent.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the question, and I appreciate the many years we've had the opportunity to discuss such issues. First, I very much appreciate the action that you and other members have taken to remind the President and the new Secretary of State of this 45-year-long tradition of providing for private dissent messages. This is not just blowing off steam. This is a means to have the kind of deliberation among professionals that can improve our foreign policy and make America safer. As I said, every employee of the State Department knows they have a primary responsibility to protect the safety and security of American citizens and to follow the orders in the new administration. I've served 6 different presidents, both Republicans and Democratic, with the same loyalty, and that is what typifies Foreign Service discipline. So it is absolutely crucial, and I think maybe the White House and certainly Secretary Tillerson have heard the message on this. Just one more point. It's not just about formulation of foreign policy. What concerns me greatly is that a major step like this, done without preparing the groundwork for not only our diplomats, but our military, our experts in the Department of Justice and Homeland Security, without giving them the ability in advance to prepare the explanation and prepare the implementation, amounts to foreign policy malpractice. But I thank you for your support.
Thank you, and I want to thank all the panelists, especially my friend Dr. Khan, Mr. Khan. Thank you all for your courage.
Thank you very much. Miss Demings of Florida.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and to all of you, thank you so much for being here. I've heard so many things today that I could ask a question about, but a couple of points. Mr. Brain, you said that you learned, first of all, to defend a set of values long before you learned to fire a weapon. And as a person who served as a police chief, I could say the same thing. I learned to defend the values and to understand the values of this country long before I earned or learned anything else. We have seen demonstrations, and I think we've already talked about that around the country. Young people at Berkeley protesting against this unconstitutional order. And I heard it said earlier that we need to get involved on the local and state level. But what concerns me is that the strain that has been placed on local government, particularly law enforcement, local law enforcement, dealing with an order that is unjust and improper. And so as we encourage our young people to get involved, I thought it was a beautiful sight. What also, as we encourage people to get involved, what direction and instructions, and how can we have a more organized effort so that they can be a major tool in moving our agenda forward? And anyone who feels like they can answer that question, thank you.
Just briefly, I would say I could not agree with you more about the position this places law enforcement in. And I would say, certainly at Dulles, the law enforcement officials who responded there, those officers could not have been more professional. They could not have done a better job, but they were not given the advance warning or the tools to do that job. And we saw that as well with Customs and Border Patrol. They were trying to do the right thing. They didn't know what the executive order meant. It was very clear. And this speaks to your point, Mr. Countryman, about process. It's unclear that the White House even knew what the executive order they were issuing meant, but they hadn't gone through the proper channels or process consulting with cabinet agencies, let alone local law enforcement, so that it could be implemented. And so what we've seen is, I think, charitably described as chaos. In terms of how to respond to it, I would simply say that it's important that we continue to do, civil society, every American continue to do what we've seen, which is to simply place yourself in a position physically or however else you can to send the simple message that you cannot single out a group of Americans like this. That if you're coming for you, you're coming for me too.
Lois Frankel of Florida.
Thank you, thank you. And thank you all to the panel. You've been very articulate and we're very appreciative of your comments. I just wanted you to know that yesterday the Foreign Affairs Committee met with King Hussein of Jordan, who is a great. Abdullah, yes, sorry. Abdullah, yes. Yes, I know. But we met with him, and he echoed a lot of what you said today. So I think it's pretty clear to everybody in the room that the new executive order is inhumane, it denigrates our values, and it is dangerous to our security. I think it's dangerous in another way also. I liken it to a misguided, dangerous hoax, because for many Americans, they listen to this ban and they say it sounds like a good idea, and they don't understand the consequences of it. And I think we should not ignore that a lot of people are listening to this and saying, oh yeah, that sounds like it's a good idea. That's why your voices are so important, and that's why I think just hearing from ordinary citizens all over this country is so important. And we need to really to shift the conversation to more constructive ways. I mean, we want to keep the country safe. And what I want to say to the new president is, why don't you just get back on the track of jobs, because probably the best way to stop this radicalization from happening, which is what is the real danger to Americans here in our country, is to have a great economy where people do not feel desperate, where they have hope, where they are not in a position to be radicalized. And so I want to thank you and to implore that you keep your voices strong, and you will have our support the whole way. I yield back.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're still on a 2-minute maximum for members of Congress, which is highly, highly unusual. We appreciate their cooperation. Mr. Evans of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to give voice, coming from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where William Penn talked about religious freedom. And I'd like to thank my House colleagues who have gathered here today to discuss where we currently stand relative to the President's executive order issued on Friday, January 27, entitled Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorism and Entry into the United States, which essentially is a ban on Muslims and refugees. I had the opportunity to speak directly with impacted community leaders this weekend as we joined at the Philadelphia airport. That was along with the governor of the state and my colleagues from the city of Philadelphia, Congressman Brady and Congressman Boyle. As we joined together, the administration has turned its back on some of the most vulnerable people in the world. Our city has a legacy of welcoming those from countries who come to America in anticipation of liberty our nation offers. The order goes beyond the democratic principles that we hold true. I look forward to continue working with my colleagues to oppose this un-American order. Coming from the city of Philadelphia, sisterly affection is a place that we welcome everyone in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Barragan, Miss Barragan of California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also spent my Saturday night at Los Angeles International Airport. And I was with my colleague, Judy Chu, as we were trying to do what we could after I heard what the ACLU was doing with Congressman Nadler at JFK. And I was stunned, although I shouldn't be now, about what happened. I couldn't even get anybody from Customs and Border Protection to talk to me. They couldn't tell me if any of my constituents were being detained, if they were getting access to a lawyer. And we saw a number of lawyers there who were feeding me information, and it felt very helpless. There was a sense of relief when we heard there was an order, and it was great, but it didn't seem like it was being followed. And I think that, for me, I see my role as a member as providing that congressional oversight. but we really couldn't do it without each of one of you today. So I wanted to thank you for your hard work, whether it's a story that you put on this, whether it's the sacrifice that your family members have made, and Mr. Segura, for you in particular, for the fight that you are continuing to take, because you give people in this country hope. People hear about the work you are doing, and they need hope, and you're giving it to them. So I want to thank you and your organization. Please reach out to us and let us know what we can do to help and what we can tell our constituents. I happen to sit on Homeland Security, and I'm going to be asking plenty of questions about what went wrong, and we need to figure out a way to make sure that these orders are being followed. So just wanted to thank you for that and make sure that you let the public know who they can call, because I'm sure you're overwhelmed, and partnering up with some of the firms I know that are trying to help out as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. From Oregon, our colleague, Ms. Bonamici.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to each and every one of you. The personal stories especially heart-wrenching. Oregon yesterday filed a lawsuit seeking an injunction against the order. I'm proud of my state for doing that. We all want our country to be safe and secure, as do our constituents, but we absolutely need to do that without sacrificing our values and without violating our Constitution. The president said if he announced the order a week in advance, quote, bad dudes, close quote, would rush into the country. And can you talk a little bit about, maybe Mr. Countryman or any of you, would this order have prevented any of the recent attacks? For example, 9/11 or Boston or San Bernardino, would this order have prevented any of those attacks? Thank you.
I'll try, but I invite others. It's speculative, but it's hard to picture how the particulars of this order would have prevented any of the attacks that you just listed. Those attacks, as Mr. Galen pointed, were not carried out by refugees, but by other individuals. And I won't even get into the question of the number of acts of violence, terrorism, racist attack that are carried out by native-born Americans and which demand the attention of Congress and the President as well. What could have been different, and what again is a more usual practice through successive administrations, Democratic and Republican, is to have a coherent and broad confidential discussion within the government about how to achieve a particular goal, how to do it within the law, how to do it within the Constitution, and how to do it in a way that does not alienate our best friends and give comfort to our enemies. That was
Just to clarify,
decidedly not the case here.
How many attacks have been committed by people, refugees who have come from the countries listed in the order?
Zero is.
Thank you.
None.
Thank you so much. Lucille Roybal-Allard of California.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have more of a statement than a question. First of all, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being here, because much of what the American people are hearing right now, unfortunately, from the administration is really falsehoods and misinformation. And by your being here, you're helping to bring the facts of what the impact is of what these orders are doing. You're also helping to put a human face on the issue. And the role that you're playing is critical, because we are going to win this in the arena of public opinion. And the only way we're going to win this is if the American people know the truth, what the facts are. And each and every one of you have given your expertise, have given your perspective, and your human story about the travesty of what is happening. So I want to just say thank you for that. And, you know, Mr. Khan, you challenged Congress. And I can assure you that, and you're hearing this from all our members, I am the ranking member on the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security. The stories that we're hearing today, the information that you are providing, I can assure you that I and other members of the Democratic Subcommittee will be using that information to helping to shine a very bright light on the travesty to make America once again welcoming, and so that we can live up to our values. So again, thank you, each and every one of you, for being here, and thank you for what you have done and what you're going to continue to do until we win back the America that we all know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're now under the 2-minute rule for the members of Congress, and I recognize my great friend on Judiciary, Jerry Nadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me also thank all the members of this panel for your great service, not only to humanity, but to this country in particular. I, too, along with Congresswoman Velasquez, rushed to JFK Airport early Saturday morning, spent much of the day there. We found Mr. Segura there, among others. What we found was chaos and confusion. Customs and Border Protection agents did not even understand fully what they were being asked to do. Detainees were being held incommunicado with no access to counsel and no ability even to learn their names, for outsiders to learn their names. But now we have several important court orders that clarify that individuals must have access to counsel, legally authorized individuals are not to be deported, and other critical protections. And yet we have heard several disturbing reports that these court orders are not being fully complied with. I'd like to ask Mr. Segura, can you describe what you are hearing and what the experience is? If the CBP agents are being directed to comply or not to comply, or being informed of these court orders? And what are the legal ramifications if they're being directed not to comply? And what if this direction is coming from the top?
Thank you, and that is exactly right. We have heard of numerous reports across the country of officials not abiding by the order. Individuals have been returned after the stay ordered. The stay was ordered on Saturday night. Courts have ordered those, many of those people returned. But we are still trying to discover all of the problems that may have occurred. The judge in the Eastern District of New York ordered the government to produce a list of all those who were detained. The response from the government was simply that no one is currently being detained. But the information that we need is everyone who came in and was subject to that order since it was issued late Friday afternoon, because we need to follow up to see exactly who, the executive order, who was detained after the executive order on Friday afternoon, because we need to know what happened to everyone who may have been subject to that. Like you said, we were very limited with the information that we could get from outside of the airports. We relied primarily on family members.
But we're still seeing that these orders are not being enforced, not being complied with?
Yes, and in fact, there was a motion for contempt filed, I believe, in the Eastern District of Virginia, because I believe they're still having access to counsel issues, like attorneys are unable to speak to individuals. So a lot of that is still coming to light. There are, like I said, dozens of cases across the country, and it's our expectation that all of those practices and potential violations of the court order will be challenged.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. My friend, whose house I stay at almost as much as mine, Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Leader. Thank all of you so very much from the depths of all of our hearts. We are in awe of your courage, all of you, and from the various perspectives that you have, from the various experiences that you have endured. And so thank you so much for being here with us today. I'd like to ask this question. Well, let me just say this first. You know, I said it yesterday on the floor of the House. It's not years ago that my father came from Italy in 1913. He's not alive today, but nothing would have pleased him more, nor would his dream come true, to see his only child, his daughter, as a representative in the United States House of Representatives. That's what this country is about. We should not let any individual deny the American dream to anyone who comes to this great nation. I guess to you, Mr. Segura, when I heard you talk about the Constitution, you know, there's always a lot of the debate on the TV now is this a ban? It's not a ban. Is it a ban?
It is a complete and total ban on Muslim immigration, just like the president said when he announced his campaign. It is clear from both the order and how the intent behind it that this is in fact a ban on Muslims.
You also said that it is unconstitutional. If you can tell us quickly on what basis is it unconstitutional, so that the members of this body and the nation understands that it is unconstitutional when the folks on the other side of the aisle, quite frankly, hold up the Constitution and at the same time you tell us about whether or not it's being shred in this instance.
And I think you can hold up the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and go through it. It violates the First Amendment. It fails to treat all religions the same. It establishes a preference for certain religions over others. It discriminates on the basis of national origin and Muslim faith, in this case violating the Equal Protection Clause. It also violates directly the immigration laws of this country, which prohibit the discrimination in the issuance of visas, and there are a variety of other legal issues, including an order that we only discovered in the middle of this week, but was issued on Friday night as well, provisionally revoking visas of individuals of these countries. That we also believe is unlawful. So this violates a whole host of issues, but it strikes at the very core of our Constitution.
Our recourse under a violation of the Constitution, is it legal? Are there other ways in which we can address the issue of the violations of the Constitution of the United States of America?
Well, the courts are there to serve as the check on the executive, and we expect that they will do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Judiciary Committee is going to be looking into this and do a special report on it. Mrs. Debbie Dingle, wife of our former senior colleague, the Dean, John Dingle, we're proud to have her here.
Thank you, Mr. Conyers and my dear colleague from Michigan. I want to thank all of you for being here. I've got several friends and associate myself with all the comments that have been made. I'm ground zero. I have, I suspect, the largest population of Muslims in the country living in my district. And I cannot express to you enough the fear that is in their hearts and souls that someone's going to knock on their door at 3 a.m. and pull them out of their beds and deport them from this country. I want to associate myself with the remarks of Congressman Nadler and DeLauro, because I spent the weekend working with the ACLU and other civil rights organizations trying to protect people who are legal residents, who've gone through a vetting process, who have green cards, children that have been born in this country and have American passports and are being threatened in some way, not allowed into this country. We all want to protect our national security. But the fact of the matter is, national security also means protecting the very core pillars of our Constitution, which is freedom of religion. So as members of Congress, we now need to work with you. I associate myself with everything here, but with the experts, how do we help people working with you? We now have to be smart. We have to have a strategy that works with the legal and members of Congress to protect American citizens right now and to protect this country. What do we do with you, building on what? As the court cases are finding it's unconstitutional, Americans are still being threatened. Legal residents are being threatened. How do we work together? Any of the experts?
At the end, maybe they can say something.
Okay.
If I may.
I'm sorry, and I apologize. I had another hearing, so.
Since July, I have traveled throughout the country. I've been to your district. We have met with the community leaders. In each and every district, please invite the community leaders. Speak to them. Tell them that Congress support you. These patriots sitting here in each and every district, invite the community leaders publicly, hold press conference in your district, and encourage people that these are illegal steps that are being taken. These are being challenged by these organizations. Not only that, people have taken the steps themselves. They're knocking at the offices and the doors of those that stand with this administration. They are telling them, we will hold you responsible. This is a historic moment. I keep emphasizing again and again. This is historic moment. All patriots are being called by my country, by my nation. Stand up. If you tell that much to your district, to the people that are disheartened, they will feel heartened. They will be faithful when the time comes to stand up with you. They will come forward in flocks. They are already lined up and looking towards the leadership.
I just want to add one. You're right. I'm having town hall meetings every night. There was another one with 1,000 people last night. We need to be doing it across the country. Everybody expects it to happen in Dearborn. They know we're going to have our city councils. We need city councils across the country to stand up. So that is one thing that I would. And at the airport on Sunday night, the young people organized this. Young people. We had 10,000 people that came together in less than 20 hours to voice what they thought.
Very good.
Sir, if I might, in answer to the question, what can citizens do? 3 quick points. 1, individual and organized nonviolent protest. Secondly, organized participation in every election, not every 4 years, but every state, local, special election. Third, and I think extremely important, is to focus on the fire and not on the smoke. Fake news and alternate facts are like what a thief does with his left hand while he picks your pocket with his right hand. Focus on the substance.
Thank you. Mrs. Judy Chu of California.
Well, thank you to the panelists for being here, and thank you, Mr. Khan, for being such an inspiration to so many of us who do believe in the Constitution. Well, on Friday, Donald Trump issued his Muslim ban. On Saturday, I received my first frantic call about 50 Iranians who were held in detention, who had valid green cards, but were held there at LAX for hours. So I rushed to LAX. There I found people with a legal right to be here, kept for hours without food, and blocked from receiving legal advice from an attorney despite a court order allowing legal assistance. Amongst them were a 78-year-old woman, a 7-month-old child, and a man who'd been here with a green card for 20 years. When I pressed Customs and Border Protection for answers, they stonewalled me. It was clear from those of us on the ground this was a discriminatory policy that was poorly conceived and hastily executed, but the most troubling thing was that it was motivated by prejudice, causing pain as soon as it was signed. And this Muslim ban is not who we are as a nation. So I'd like to ask Mr. Breen, do you believe there is any factual basis to the claims made by the Trump administration that the refugee and immigrant vetting processes in the 7 countries that are affected by the order have such critical flaws that we have to completely shut down our borders to them? And what would an intelligent policy to review immigrant vetting processes look like? What are some ways we could achieve the objective of reviewing the vetting system without angering our allies and emboldening terrorist organizations?
Thank you very much. And let me answer the question this way, just for the sake of clarity. From the perspective of a terrorist organization, I cannot think of a single worse way to try to infiltrate somebody into the United States than through the refugee processing system. It's the worst option by miles. And here's why. You can't, as a refugee, you can't just apply to the United States for resettlement. It's not how it works. You have to go to a country, do what my friend here did and register with the United Nations as a refugee. About 1% of those people who register are then referred for resettlement to any other country of refuge in the world. That's 1%. So now you've got to win the lottery just to get referred. You have no control over where you're sent. So you could end up anywhere in the world that accepts refugees. So if you're trying to come to the United States, that's a second lottery that you're playing. Yeah, Sweden, Canada, who knows, Germany. Then, if you're referred to resettlement in the United States, you go through an exhaustive process, some of which is classified, much of which is not, but it's a continuous 18-step vetting process. Every intelligence and law enforcement organization in the federal government vets you, not once, but continuously through their databases the entire time you're being processed. It takes about 2 years. If you get through all of that, then you get on an airplane, you come here. That makes a refugee the single safest person who's on your flight. I've never gone through that kind of vetting. I had a senior security clearance in the U.S. military. I never went through vetting like that. So there's no worse option if you're trying to get a terrorist into the U.S. It makes absolutely no sense. These security processes are continuously updated and reviewed by the government. The Obama administration ordered a review of the vetting processes in 2011. That is being claimed, again, fake news, right? There are claims that this is the same thing as the current ban. It could not be more different, and I'd be happy to go into that. I want to respect time, but there is no comparison between that normal security review and what's being done now. The way to handle this is to do very much what Mr. Countryman has suggested. Turn to the agencies of government responsible for this and ask them to improve the process if there need to be improvements made. Conducting a review and an investigation. But to drop something like this without any of those normal processes, putting chaos in the system, it clearly backfired.
Yes. Votes are being called now, dear friends, and we have Yvette Clark of New York, Brenda Lawrence of Michigan, my dear colleague, and Mrs. Maloney of New York.
And Jan Schakowsky.
And oh gosh. Okay. No. This is it. Let's go with Yvette.
What we're going to do is have them ask their questions and then answer after. So we can.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank our leader for convening us. I thank all of you for your expert testimony today. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, so this challenge has expanded even beyond those 7 countries. And I want to ask Mr. Segura a couple of things. The subjective nature of the implementation, the CBP officers, and what they're doing in their own judgment, how legal it is. So we have a situation where I have a constituent who is in detention who's actually from Guyana, and his phone was taken from him. And based on some conversations on his phone, which could be interpreted many different ways, he's being threatened with deportation. We're trying to deal with his case right now. But there are similar circumstances with the taking of mobile devices, reading into conversations, common conversations, and interpreting that to determine who gets entry and who doesn't. I'd like to know the legalities behind that. Persons with H-1B visas, are they part of this ban? I have a Sudanese doctor who I'm trying to get to his job, who works in the hospital in my district. We're dealing with all of these intricacies, and what I'm finding is that there's profiling taking place. No one wants to talk about this, but there are individuals who are on flights that are residents, citizens, and based on how they look, they're being separated from the rest of the flight and being questioned. Their phones are being taken from them. It goes on and on. I'm trying to get to what are the legalities so that we can get real instruction to the people of the district who are coming from varying nations and are all being sort of looked at in the same way.
We'll take all of these, Brenda Lawrence, Jan Schakowsky, Lofgren. And we'll answer them all at once. Forgive us for this, but we're under.
I thank you for being here and associate myself with so many of the questions. My question
is one, we keep talking about the injustice, which it is to this ban is, but extremists wants to portray this fight outside of the United States as a clash of civilizations, the United States against. Is the Muslim ban helping them to carry out their work, and have you observed any heightened dialogue in portraying the United States as being an enemy that must be fought?
Okay, we'll hold that one, please. We'll respond all together. Jan Schakowsky, do you have a comment?
I do. I just wanted to say to Mr. Khan, he changed my life in many ways from the speech he gave, and I've carried a copy of the Constitution with me ever since. What it seems to me, and we've heard reports of an uptick in bullying and not just only anti-Muslim activity, but I was wondering from you, Mr. Khan, what kind of, if you check, because it's pretty tough, the kinds of communications that have been quite negative to many people, to even members of the Congress, as a result of pushing back.
Well, that's...
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, perhaps we can, because some of the questions have been focused on some of the technicalities to Mr. Segura, why don't we just hear a response from each of the guests to everything that you've heard here, and obviously attending to the last questions that were asked. I want to thank our panelists, though, and thank them. Thank you, Mr. Kerry, for bringing the values of the evangelicals here and to talk about the cities of refuge and the refugee resettlement program, as you say, is the crown jewel of U.S. humanitarianism. Mr. Countryman, thank you for briefing us on the 1971 State Department employees' private descent. Very instructive, the perspective you put it in. Mr. Segura, of course, thank you to the ACLU. You've had a lot of questions geared your way. We're all grateful to you. I want to just say this. When I talked to the Homeland Security Department since all of this is happening, they told me this would have been much easier and we would have settled all this very fast if so many people didn't show up at the airport. Imagine that they would say such a thing. Farah, thank you for sharing your personal story with us. Omar, your comment that it's not the enemy, they're fleeing the enemy, and thank you for being with us on the steps of the Supreme Court. Michael, thank you for your perspective from one who has worn our uniform. Mr. Khan, what can we say? Such a beautiful presentation. You challenged us here. You have inspired us, all of you. I hope we've given you some hope when you see the intensity that the members bring to this. Now we challenge the conscience of the country to live up to our founders' dream.
Madam Leader, if I may, I won't ask my questions because time is running out. We want to hear the answer. But I just want to say one of the important takeaways from this hearing is that this order has made America less safe. Right. It has endangered our national security, in addition to its legal defects. For that, I thank you greatly.
Now, answers briefly from all of you. 1 minute. I apologize in advance for that.
Well, thank you to all the representatives for your good questions. I'd just like to add one thing. In addition to the immediate crisis and the people whose lives are currently in limbo, please also think about the state of our refugee resettlement system, which has been built up over many years. It involves private sector, volunteers, churches, community groups, local and state government, working with the federal government. This whole system is at risk of being dismantled during this 4-month ban on refugee resettlement. So if you could work with the State Department and instruct them to work with the resettlement organizations to sustain their whole system so that it is in place and able to receive refugees when we start receiving them again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerry.
Thank you so much.
A very short answer to Representative Lawrence's question. There are people who, there is anecdotal evidence so far tracking the phenomenon that she is concerned about and we're all concerned about, which is increased use of this order by al-Daesh and other terrorist groups for recruitment and propaganda. I think there are people and organizations, including the government, who track that systematically, and I think there should be a concrete answer to that question about how this has been used in the near future. It's only logical to assume they know what sells with their audience.
Thank you. Thank you.
Briefly, I would just say the advocacy community is energized and mobilized. The ACLU and its partners across the country and its affiliates in every state are ready to take on these battles. This is just the first. We're going to see battles on reproductive rights, on LGBT, on every civil rights issue in the ACLU is ready to help all of you and provide whatever advice we can on those issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Jankowski, just briefly answering your question, there had been 2,500 incidents reported of harassment of Muslims in this country. These are reported. Last week in Victoria, Texas, a place of worship, a mosque was burned down. I must mention a letter that we received. We received thousands of letters of support and encouragement. One letter came that must be mentioned. That letter was written to us by a retired Army nurse that served in Second World War. She writes in that letter to us, Mr. and Mrs. Khan, remain standing even if you're one person in this nation, because nobody spoke in Second World War the atrocities against our brothers and sisters of Jewish faith that took place because nobody spoke. Continue to speak, and those atrocities will not be repeated. So I hope I answered your question.
We're almost out of time, and I apologize again, but I just wanted to acknowledge that Sheila Jackson Lee was here and Nina Titus was here as well. No. Can't do it now, but I can acknowledge
I was in
you.
Judiciary Committee, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
That's where I should have been.
No, that's okay. We were there for you.
Please.
Thank you all. I'll be very
Continue.
brief. You're absolutely right, Representative Lofgren, that this is not in the national security interest of the United States. It is almost certain to backfire. It will not keep Americans safe. It will cripple our fight. It is already crippling our fight against the Islamic State. The Taliban and the Islamic State are openly celebrating this executive order. That should tell us something. And I don't think it's a coincidence that veterans have turned out in large numbers spontaneously to protest this, that they arrived at airports, and that they continue. The anger in the veterans community at the betrayal of people we've worked with and the values we signed up to defend is very real. And like all of our fellow citizens, we continue to stand ready to work with you to exercise our rights as citizens, but also to meet our responsibilities as citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Omar.
Yeah, in regard of the question that was asked before, this yes, the ISIS and the other radical groups, they already start using this ban as a proof to their point of view that their propaganda messages actually that the United States is not just against the radicals in general, they are against, in specific, they are against all Muslims and Islam. And that's unfortunately is empowering them, and as they are being used as a recruiting tool to ISIS and other terrorist groups. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Leader, and want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I want to say in a brief, I cannot count the blessing. I'm here in the United States of America, and I'm so honored to be. United States give me my freedom and to live and do whatever I want. And I want to also share with you that I also bring something, my legacy, and my two amazing boys who want to grow up and join the military to defend this country and defend the Constitution. And God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. This is wonderful. We will stay active and we will follow your counsel. Thank you, and this hearing is adjourned.